Colonel Macgregor, welcome here, my dear friend. Thank you for accommodating my schedule. Before we get to what you have characterized as war, debt, and delusion, the president's statement at the UN to President Zelensky and in his own posting of Truth Social, I have to ask you a few other questions about what he said at the UN. According to Arab leaders with whom he met after his speech to the General Assembly, he told them that he would prevent President Netanyahu from having the Israelis annex the West Bank. Can he do that? Can he get away with that?
Okay.
There we go.
You know, as president of the United States, the answer is yes, he could profoundly influence that outcome. On the other hand, we haven't seen much evidence that he's behaved like president of the United States. He behaves more like someone implementing guidance and guidelines from Mr. Netanyahu. So to answer that question, we'll have to wait and see.
If I were to ask you if President Trump controls Prime Minister Netanyahu or Prime Minister Netanyahu controls President Trump, I know you don't want this. How could you answer it?
Mr. Netanyahu is in charge. He's been in charge 100% since President Trump took office. I don't think there's any question about that. I don't see any evidence for change in that either in the short term.
Last question before we jump to Ukraine. In the past hour, the Pentagon revealed that Secretary Hegseth has ordered all 800 generals and admirals. My God, I had no idea there were 800 of them. Maybe another topic for another time. I know how you feel about this, and of course, I agree with you.
Yeah.
But all 800 of them around the world to meet him at a Marine base in Virginia next week. What could this be about, and how disruptive to military order would it be if all generals and admirals assembled in one place at one time?
Well, part of me instinctively wants to say that people could actually get a lot of work done that's positive and useful for the American people in the absence of all these flag officers, but I don't want to go there right now. So I'll simply say I suppose this is going to be at Quantico because that's the only base I can think of that could accommodate a large number of people like that. And it may have something to do with broader policy regarding where we're headed next. It may have something to do with his wanting to impart a message of what's important to him or the president. You know, he's certainly not going to tell half of them that you're no longer needed and you're fired. I think that's very unlikely. So, but it is unusual. Let's say that.
Okay. Just to jump back on the Trump-Netanyahu relationship, I neglected to run this. Our mutual friend and my former Fox colleague, Tucker Carlson, has spoken very, very directly about this. Here's what he said just 2 or 3 days ago. Chris, number 26.
I mean, Bibi's running around. This is a fact. I'm not guessing about this because I talked to people he said it to. Is running around the Middle East, his region, and his own country and telling people point blank, just stating it, I control the United States. I control Donald Trump. He's saying that. And again, I'm not guessing at all. That's a fact. And I dare them to say that's not true because it is true and they know it's true. So I'm an American. How do you think it makes me feel?
All right, we cut that short. He goes on and on and on, and it's a little repetitive. But the point is, he spoke to people who have claimed to have heard Netanyahu saying he's in charge of Trump.
The only comment I can make is that I have sources in various places who've told me the same thing. I'm not sure that's really new. I think most everybody in the region knows that Mr. Netanyahu is in a position to deliver on Trump. In other words, whatever he wants, he's going to get. So that's not really news. I guess it's shocking to the American people, and it should be, but they'd better wake up and figure out who's really running the show. And that's not Donald Trump.
Chris, can we put up the full screen from Truth Social where the president says it's time for Ukraine to win? I know you've seen this, Colonel, but just so we're on the same page here, the president posted this after he met After he spoke at the UN, then met with President Zelensky, he posted this. I'm reading it. I think Ukraine, with the support of the European Union, is in a position to fight and win, in caps, all of Ukraine back in its original form. With time, patience, and the financial support of Europe, and in particular NATO, now I'm editorializing, 3/4 of whose budget is paid by the US. Now I'm reading again. The original borders from where this war started is very much an option. Why not? How dangerous is this kind of a U-turn from the President of the United States before we even get into debt and delusion?
I think the Moscow is unsurprised. They're seeing the final transformation of Donald Trump into Biden 2. So for all intents and purposes, that's what you've got right now, Biden 2. Certainly as far as foreign and defense policy is concerned, and even in some areas of domestic policy. Everybody is disappointed, but it reaffirms something that Tucker said, because many of the same forces that want us to stay entangled and embroiled in the Middle East against the various states and people that Israel wants to attack also back this unending war in Ukraine against Russia. And again, we got to go back to the banking cartels in New York City and the city of London. They're very much interested in keeping everything going as it is. And then on top of that, you have your so-called globalist governments in places like London, Paris, and Berlin, who fear an end to this war because they know if it ends anytime soon, they're going to be eliminated as the leaders of their respective countries. They're losing airspeed and altitude very, very quickly. So all in all, none of us should be terribly surprised, but we all have a right to be disappointed. And of course, remember, we haven't even talked about the potential for yet another conflict, a new one to emerge in Venezuela. So all of this suggests that President Trump has walked away from just about everything he said he would do or not do.
Before I play your favorite senator from South Carolina beaming over this, I want to play the president more or less restating it in the presence of President Macron. Now, Macron, in your view and mine, has crazy ideas about Europe and where they're going to get their money from and whether Russia's going to occupy Paris and all that nonsense. However, look at the sort of biting my tongue look on President Macron's face as President Trump articulates this. It's time for Russia to win back it's time for Ukraine to win back what the Russians have taken. Cut number 22.
It's been a terrible war, should have ended, and Russia should have stopped it. But they've been 3.5 years and they've gotten not so far. So we'll see what happens. But the other side can fight too, and they've proven that. Maybe it could be that Russia's a paper tiger. I don't know what they are, but 3.5 years of fighting and killing everybody, of killing 7,000 people a week for nothing, So it's a very sad situation, but most of you have seen the recent statement I put out a little while ago, and I'm glad you got it. But I feel that way. I really do feel that way. Let them get their land back.
Yep.
So we'll see how it all works out.
It's not even conceivable that they could get Crimea and the Donbass back, is it?
Not a chance. Impossible. But this is, phenomenal. It exemplifies the level of ignorance and self-delusion that is widespread in the West, and an unwillingness to see reality. There's no willingness to admit that Russia is absolutely no paper tiger. As I wrote, if anything, it appears more and more like an impregnable fortress. Russia is victorious. Russia is now well prepared for anything that we throw at them, up to and including nuclear weapons, I'm afraid. And that's what worries me the most, that this sort of stupidity and ignorance could inadvertently cause a major conflict between ourselves and the Russians that is completely unnecessary and counterproductive. The lack of knowledge and understanding of what's going on in the region, the history, culture, and geography, everything is just so damaging. I don't know where to begin. And that's why I wrote War, Debt, and Delusion. Now, we'll talk about that, I hope.
All right, well, explain to us the problems as you see them with debt. I mean, we're running a $37 trillion debt with the big, beautiful bill, as Trump and the Republicans call it, assuming there's no changes to it. That'll be up to 41 trillion by the time he leaves office. The military industrial complex continues to be enriched. He claims that the NATO countries are paying for this equipment. They're probably paying for it with money borrowed from us, which we don't have, so we printed it. This is a mess.
The world is discovering that fiat currency can always be diluted in terms of its value. They're also discovering once again that gold retains its value. And so we're watching the world gradually, step by step, shift out of the dollar system and move increasingly towards gold-backed currencies. The most prominent of those currencies right now, I think, that's emerging is the yuan in China. The Chinese have set up what I would call a petro-gold exchange. And of course, this is being organized with the Saudis, and it's effectively going to replace your petrodollar. Now, what is this? Well, the Chinese are opening what I guess you might call multi-jurisdictional vaults. One in Saudi Arabia and Riyadh. They're going to have another one in Hong Kong. This is beyond the Shanghai Gold Exchange. And these are effectively warehouses for massive quantities of gold. And that means that when China and Saudi Arabia do business, they will do business in their respective currencies, because both of those currencies could be reclaimed as gold. In other words, China buys oil and gas. The Saudis buy whatever they do from the Chinese, whether it's military equipment or anything else. And both sides have access to the warehouse. And as a result, they can move that gold into their portion of the warehouse. In other words, it completely bypasses the dollar. And this is a global effort underway right now to de-dollarize. In the meantime, we're simply debasing the currency. We continue to replenish the monetary supply, the money supply, by what, 6-7%? And the more you print, the less it's worth. It's simply the truth. You don't need complex mathematics to figure that out. And our currency is being debased, and increasingly nobody wants it. So the Chinese are dumping hundreds of millions of dollars worth of our treasuries. Ultimately, I think they'll dump all of them, and they're not the only ones. The Japanese, the Saudis, and others that hold substantial portions of our debt are shedding the United States Treasury, which in their judgment is dead weight. They're losing money. They want to get out of it, and increasingly people don't want to do business in the dollar. Now, the Chinese banking system per se that's backing much of this is not yet as sophisticated and complex as our own, but they're moving there very, very rapidly. And it would be a mistake to believe that the world is going to rely on our SWIFT system indefinitely. It's just not going to happen. This is very, very dangerous. This is as dangerous as open warfare with Russia for the United States and the Republic.